This is Track Talk, bringing a commentated game of 1849 to the channel. This is a step away from the 1830 family and a really different type of game, so I'm excited to be commenting it. There are a number of important differences between this game and the 1830 family. The privates are entirely different than any of the privates we've seen in prior games. There are two gauges of track with varying costs to lay them. There is a double share in all these companies in addition to the president's share, and then there's a fixed starting order of companies. The train roster is very different. There's an additional end game trigger in terms of a player reaching the top right hand of the market in addition to the normal bankruptcy or breaking the bank. And there is a event that will trigger when a certain train is bought that will blow this tile up. So a lot of differences with more standard 1830 based games, and the game just plays and feels very different. There's a ton of track costs, which will be a thorn in the company's side throughout the entire game, and just a very different feeling than 1830. Some important strategic differences too, which we'll see over the course of the game. So with all that intro, let's go ahead and just jump right in. Actually, before we do, I want to comment for players that are maybe new to 1849 that it's very important to pay attention to the order in which companies start. So there's a fixed starting order. Companies will have to start as listed here, and the first company always has its presidency as the last private. It's also important to notice if the IFT is starting, in the first spot. Basically, the IFT is a good company down the road, but in yellow has a lot of expensive track to get anywhere for a run. In green, it can start upgrading and getting down into these better tiles or even heading up towards Messina, but in yellow it's a little rough. So if you get into a game where the IFT is the first company, be a little bit leery. Anyway, we'll jump into the private auction, and K8 will start us off. He takes the Societa Maritima Siciliana, that is a teleport company or teleport private, and will allow the owning company to basically move its token to any of these coastal cities. Next player is Killer Monkey, and he will be taking the rail or mountain busting company. This decreases the cost of the terrain for one of the gauges of track, the standard gauge. Womprat taking Campagna, and this is just a flat bonus to one of your runs. Martin going to be looking to start the SFA if he wins this private, so this is the private which gives you the presidency. SFA is a company starting on the south coast. If it can get token in Terra Nova, it does have some legs and can run pretty well throughout the game, but if it starts later in the game, oftentimes has very limited potential. So in this particular game, we'll be starting first, so we'll potentially have some good runs for it. And at this point, each player is on their own private. K8 has the option of pulling here. It will give him the SMS for basically face value, but all the other players will get face value too. So he has to do a little bit of thinking here and decide if that's worth it to him. The minimal par in the starting game is 68. So you'll need, I believe it's 136 to par, because you just need 2 shares in order to par. So we will see if he pulls here. He does, so everybody gets their choice of the companies, and by pulling he has left himself, I'm sure, enough money in order to float. So Martin will now have the option of parring the SFA. The other thing I should note is that when you par, the treasury isn't 2 times what you par for, or whatever, how many shares you buy. You have to pay for your tokens up front, so a little bit different from 1830 family games. Martin will be parring the SFA for max. There are higher pars in this game, but they are only available in different phases, so he parred for the max that he could. When he pars, he also has the option of buying additional shares, but it looks like he is not going to be doing that. I'm actually unsure if because he got the company through the private, if he had the option of doing that. But for other companies that don't come from the private, you do have that choice. So ATA is the next company up. ATA is a good company, starts in the southeast, and oftentimes will be rushing over to Terra Nova to secure that token. Terra Nova is a pretty important token or tile. It oftentimes will control a lot of routes in this congested area of the map. And Killer Monkey does take the AZA, and he will be. Will he buy another share? He does. So he's buying his treasury shares. That is how you capitalize the companies. It does mean that you may run into a cash crunch later in the game if you buy too many of these. And generally speaking, buying treasury shares in another player's company is a way to limit their long-term potential. Womprat has the option of starting the CTL. CTL is not my favorite company. It starts in the far west of the island, has a lot of trouble developing routes for itself without help. Can run a little bit in the early game by just laying a loop here and running 2-4 trains, but is a little bit of a risky company. Womprat does not have the teleport. So that is one way that players can either get out of the CTL or maybe even the IFT is with the teleport, but he doesn't have that. CTL does get parred, and he pars again for the max. Martin, will he continue to invest in the SFA? Looks like he's passing for now. He does have the option of just sitting on the SFA and just collecting his private income. As long as he doesn't buy a train with that company, he will just get his private income. So he may be looking to do that, but we'll see if he starts building himself routes or not. KRPY is the player that has the option of the IFT. Again, the IFT is a good company, but it's hard to get off the ground. So may see him just invest his money in elsewhere, which it looks like he is doing. Actually picking the CTL, which is a little bit strange because the CTL is operating last, so most likely to be able to buy in its privates and sold down. Also probably a little bit more limited in terms of revenue potential. Martin 2D passing, and will he continue to invest? He does. So he's maybe just looking to buy paying shares in as many companies as he can afford. And as a result, it looks like Killer Monkey will probably have priority. And he does. So first company to operate is the SFA with Martin, and he will not give himself a route just yet. I mean, he didn't really have the option to do that, but will he buy a train? He does, closes his private, and as a result is looking to run this company from the start. Probably recognizes that he needs to get down in Terra Nova before someone else tokens it out. There is one company that is allowed to choose its starting location, and it's the AFG, but that company is the last to float, so really not in danger of being token out of Terra Nova in the near future. ATA now will be laying some narrow gauge track, so it costs $160, but because it's narrow gauge, it only costs him $40, and he will be the first person to buy a train. Oh, sorry, no, the SFA did buy a train. ATA will be running in the next operating, and we go to the CTL. CTL going to be heading down south, probably trying to link up with the SFA. The SFA, as part of its operation, is going to be laying track that the CTL hopes to take advantage of down the road. And he also buys a 4 train. We are into the next stock round. Killer Monkey doesn't have money for shares without selling. And Womprat is buying one of his own CTL shares. Not sure if I like that. CTL, it's going to be running for 50. It'll be running for a little bit more than potentially the SFA. ATA will be running for probably 40 here, unless, well, he can get in Terra Nova and tokens, so he'll be running pretty well too. I like the ATA a little bit better than CTL, so I'd like to see that bought. Plus, you're buying your own treasury shares, which pay into your company. You're getting your capital out of the company early in the game, so maybe not the best. Martin sitting on his cash. Interesting that he's sitting on his cash when he also killed his private. I would imagine that, if you were going to be doing a more passive strategy, you'd want to invest in the other companies so you maximize your income. but he will be leaving with priority as a result of not buying any shares. So maybe just prioritized the turn order in the stock round. The next company to float is the IFT, so could he be looking at picking that up and running it with the SFA? SFA, if it gets into Terra Nova, can start laying track for the IFT, but I imagine that we're going to see an ATA token on Terra Nova, so you also be helping them. SFA is laying towards Terra Nova and just runs his Fortran and pays it out. ATA, going to be linking up with Terra Nova. Might see a token here. We do. And we'll be running for 70. See, this is what I'm saying. So he's running for 70. It looks like the CTL is only going to be running for 50. I don't know why you buy the CTL share instead of the ATA. And he buys a second 4 train. This opens up the 6 trains, which if they are bought by the CTL will allow him to buy in his private. He has a reasonable private, not the most expensive, but it would allow him to buy another share if he bought it in. CTL operating now, continuing to lay along the south and running his train. Does he buy the 6? He does. And he actually does not buy in his private. So, going to have 2 trains and run a little bit better as a result, but missing out on, some shares in the stock round. Martin has priority. Will he take the IFT? Instead, buying his own SFA. SFA is looking to get into Terra Nova next turn, so we'll be running better than just 30. This player is buying an ATA, and the rest of the players are passing. Will Martin continue to invest here? Looks like he's buying more SFA, so he's pretty invested in this company. Again, buying your shares early does limit the long-term treasury potential for the company. And Martin will lose priority and actually be going last. So he has just 1 train, links up with Terra Nova and tokens, will improve his run to 70. Does he buy 6 here? Looks like he does. And CTL probably heading down south still. Yep. Has 2 trains. Did Martin buy in his private? He did not. We do have 2 operating rounds, so maybe just waiting until the final round. CTL now. He did a new mechanic, so something that we haven't seen in other games. He issues a share to get a little more cash into his company. When you issue the share, you get the market value at the time it's issued, but it does hurt your market value in the sense that each share you issue drops your share price. And then he buys in his private. So interesting to me that he does this, right? Because he could have done this last operating round and had the money to invest. And now, instead of waiting until the second operating round in the set so he gets another payout, he does it in the first operating round. Kind of interesting. He also, by issuing the share, is going to prevent that share from paying into his treasury. So a lot of just kind of little inefficiencies, I would say, over the last 2 operating rounds for the CTL. ATA, running 2 trains. He also buys in his private. Buying this private makes a little more sense because if he is looking to lay expensive track, it makes it a lot more palatable. The only mountain track that he can lay, however, will be narrow gauge, so it's already 1/4 the printed cost, and the private he bought in doesn't help with that. So another player buying in their private in the first operating round of a set. He upgrades. Oh, okay. So Ragusa, I forgot, he can upgrade this and he cuts that cost in half as a result of that. So saved himself 20 bucks. Upgrading Ragusa will be running a little bit better with his 2 trains. He also buys a 6, and will he redeem a share? He actually issues another one. Has a little bit more money in his company as a result. SFA, starting to lay up towards Palermo. This is a very high value revenue center, so maybe looking to incorporate that into a run soon. Does look like he's going to be having to lay narrow gauge, which is fine. It is cheaper, but it's going to make it very hard for him to reach RCS in Palermo. until he gets better trains. Each of the narrow gauge track costs 2 track points, so it's going to be 2, 4, 6, and then 8 to get there. And also his trains can't run this track unless he goes through this dit to train gauge. You can't run, you can lay narrow gauge against standard gauge, but you can't actually run it with a train. So maybe just setting up for the late game is it's not going to help him anytime soon with the SFA. Running 2 trains now, and he pays that out. CTL probably going to be laying this tile here and continuing to try and link up with the SFA to take advantage of the track laid by the SFA earlier. This also helps the SFA, though. It gives them the link up into the west, and the CTL is bearing the full cost of the track. So, I mean, you're helping yourself, but you're helping the other player more. Running his 2 trains, and he doesn't issue anymore. ATA will be getting a second route into Terra Nova, just looking to optimize his runs. This is narrow gauge, so it hurts with the hex trains a little bit, but in the early game, at least he has 3 trains that can now run 3 routes. And he will redeem a share now, get that back paying into the company. So everybody has bought in their privates except for K8, and he can't because he doesn't have a presidency. Does he sell out here and take the IFT? He does. So the IFT has some expensive tokens. It's 90 bucks. So even though he parred for 200 or 100, doesn't have all that much money. He will probably buy some more shares in this company to give it a little bit bigger of a treasury. Maybe he could have also looked into parring at a higher par if he wanted to operate earlier in operating round. He would have had money to buy 2 shares at least at that value, but probably didn't have money for 3, so yeah, that's why we see him parring a little bit lower. It would be nice for him if he could par high and then buy into the 8s and rust everybody's 4s before they ran, especially since he doesn't have any investment in the 4s. So he does buy a 3rd share. I don't think he would have been able to get into the 8s, actually. He doesn't have enough cash to buy that many shares, and you issue after you have the opportunity to buy trains. So you can't just push trains immediately on your first operation. Buying paying shares. And the market share is being bought for the CTL. If you have market shares at the end of the operating round, you fall back. So he's buying his own market shares in order to protect the stock value. Also, market shares don't pay into your company like they do in 1830, so they're not really helping you. Much prefer to buy your own market shares than your treasury shares, generally speaking. Martin, going to be buying ATA, sees that this company will be running pretty well as a result of the 3 trains. And he is also buying out of the market. So it might be tempting to try and buy a treasury share there. This stock value has been cut down quite a bit, so you're really hurting the long-term potential of the company by buying treasury shares when they're super cheap. And leaving shares in the market does hurt the stock value even further. Killer Monkey gonna buy his own market share, and so does the CTL. Martin, he's continuing to invest in the ATA, does buy a treasury share this time. You need to, in this game, be a little bit careful about where you buy shares from, not only because of the market versus treasury payout into the company, but also because you can uncover this double share, which is a 20% share that can be bought as the last share in a location, so either in the market or the treasury. So if he can't do it right now, but if he were to buy this last share, he would be giving K8 the opportunity to buy up this 20% share. And the stock density in this game is pretty important because the cert limit is so low at only 11. So getting those double shares is really pretty key. Killer Monkey buying the ATA. So he actually does what we just discussed, was a little risky in that he exposes this double share. We may see a player actually sell a share in order to get the money to buy that. It's going to cost them 112, so nobody can do it without selling. It will also cost them priority to do that, so maybe Womprat is just going to say, well, I'd rather have priority. So he doesn't value the double share, but he also sacrifices his priority. Martin, looks like everybody else is passing. And Killer Monkey does buy another share, so Womprat, maybe I'll get priority back. And I think he did. Yeah. All right, SFA operating again. He's going to continue to head up to Palermo. So he is hoping to change gauges in Corleone probably, but again, it's going to be very hard for him to run this track into Palermo because of how bad the narrow gauge track is. It's going to be a 6 train to get to Corleone, and then at least one more stop into Palermo, assuming he can get the standard gauge. Running his 2 trains, and has a good amount of company cash as a result of his full treasury, but not, well, does he buy a 6 here? He does. So now the 8s are available. IFT may very well be able to rust everybody else's 4s on its first operation as a result of Martin's play there. Martin's happy if that happens. I mean, he got a run of his 4. He only has 1 4 to begin with, and he's hurting all of his opponents. So probably hoping that the IFT will buy this 8 train here. IFT in green may see him just upgrade Catania and give him the option of running down into this really nice port, or start working his way up to Messina. Messina is oftentimes not too valuable in the early game just because it blows up when the 12 train is bought, and if you token it, that token is totally lost. You also just waste track points by getting up there too early. IFT, he does upgrade Catania. I think I misremembered. So this is a special tile. You can't just put any green tile there, so he does not apparently have the option of laying down south into this better port. We'll have to upgrade this yellow tile to get a run. Does he have any option? I actually don't know if there's another option of laying this track in a different way. I think that it has to have the spoke leading north here, because if you rotate it, it would be probably facing off board. Let's see here. Looking for the green C here. Yeah, so I don't think he can lay it in any other orientation. So that was a mistake on my part. Can't run south, but will upgrade. Does he buy a train here? He passes trains, so he will not rust the other players' 4s. And I had forgotten, we already discussed this, he can't afford it because he can't issue shares before the purchase. He could have issued shares in preparation of buying a train next operating round, however. So even if he starts laying himself track, he is not going to have the money for a train. It's going to need at least 350. So maybe looking to emergency buy his train instead of issuing shares. That seems pretty unfortunate. I mean, I think I would issue to avoid that. But regardless, the 4 trains are going to be surviving. I assume that Martin had kind of done that analysis prior to buying the 6, probably just happy to buy it, not really relying on the IFT to rust the other players' trains. But it would have been super nice if that had happened for him. CTL, getting closer to the SFA, running his 2 trains. And we'll be creeping up in company value, but not actually withholding for the 8. He does withhold, or he does issue, so we'll be able to afford a better train next operating round. ATA upgrading its home tile and running his 3 trains. I'm surprised that this treasury share survived into this operating round. Probably will be bought up next stock round. And he also does not have money for the 8 train. But he does not issue any shares. Martin's second operation of this set, and not going to lay any expensive track here, pretty much out of money in the company, and running his three trains, and pays out. Could issue here, looking to get a better train in the future. Does have has built his stock value up pretty well, so would get a lot of money in the company that way. But it's going to pass that. IFT still in a rough spot, has missed out on the cheap trains. So if he gives himself a route into this town here, which can he do that? Is that still blocked? He could open that up by buying his own private. He could, buy his private, give himself a route, and then force buy a 8 train. But I don't know that he's that motivated to do it. May just want to upgrade this tile and wait for other companies to link up with him, which looks like what he's going to be doing. Does he issue here? He does issue. So again, if you're going to issue shares, why not issue shares when you get the most money for them before you've fallen back twice? Unless you're intentionally trying to close the company by falling back here, I don't know. He can't buy in his privates now. He has a ton of company cash, which looks like he's going to do. And he just buys in the cheap one. He has another one, the teleport, and is just going to allow that to continue to pay into his personal treasury. That would be another way to kind of rescue the IFT, is to teleport it somewhere. That said, the really nice coastal towns are kind of already occupied, specifically Terra Nova, so maybe not as attractive. ATA running 3 trains, and we'll link up with Catania. Probably we'll see a token there. That's an important choke point on the map because it helps control access into Messina in the very valuable Calabria. And he does a token there, and is running for 280 as a result, so very high runs. That double share in the market is looking increasingly appealing. He buys the 8, rusts the 4 on the CTL. CTL was just running one of them, but still going to be a little bit upset to lose that train compared to the other players. CTL running 1 train now, probably will be upgrading Gurgenti. Does, and will almost certainly token that. It's actually not under competition from the ATA. I think the ATA has used all of its tokens, but maybe hoping to run from Gurgenti and get a little bit better of a run as a result. And he buys a 8 train, so we are staring down the 10 trains pretty soon here. The 10 trains rust the 6s, I believe. They do, so it's a little violation of the usual pattern of rusting, where the double the number rusts the train that it's corresponds with, but it does rust the 6, so we may be seeing that happen in the next OR if someone pushes trains. And he is going to just pass into the stock round. Womprat, CTL president, probably looking to get some of these double shares. There are 1 in the IFT and 1 in the ATA. ATA no longer running 3 trains, still going to be running pretty well though, but that is a little bit more expensive of a double share. IFT, on the other hand, probably still has long-term potential, but is not going to be running in the next operating round, so you may put a little damper on that double share as a result. Either way, he should probably be looking to pick up 1 of these at least. And he buys the IFT. So he recognizes that that company has long-term potential and is willing to fall back for a round in order to realize that. Martin, on the other hand, has more cash and is able to buy this double share in the ATA if he wants. We'll be at some risk of a dump. Neither of these trains are permanent. There's no money in the company, and if Killer Monkey sells out, there will be no treasury shares and no easy way to redeem them. So that's kind of risky, but he's already at risk of a dump with just holding 2 shares. So if he holds the 2 shares, might as well buy the double share in addition. And he does. So both of those available double shares fly off the treasury or market, and K8 is going to be looking at just single shares as a result. Needs to be very careful about buying a share in the CTL, as he will just give that away to the Killer Monkey player. and he's going to invest in his own company. Probably trying to clear the market or encourage other players to clear the market so it doesn't continue to fall back. Killer Monkey invests in the SFA. Womp Rat out of cash. Martin also going to be buying an IFT. And there are 2 shares left on the market. Will they both sell out? Killer Monkey is looking to continue to invest, so these may sell out. And he actually sells down, so this company is getting pretty dangerously close to the closing area. We'll definitely be falling back once more as a result of not owning a train, so we'll come within 2 spots of closing. If the company closes, he loses all of his investment. I forget what he parted for, but definitely not going to be great for him. He will have basically just been able to loot the treasury of one of his privates and accomplish nothing else. This does also give the opportunity to refloat the IFT at a higher par, and whoever has priority would look to do that. So I can't imagine he's hoping to close the company, but we'll see. CTL's double share was available. I missed that. So K8 takes that. Killer Monkey is continuing to invest in the IFT, maybe all to equal K8RP in terms of ownership of this company. Looks like Martin is going to pass. K8 doesn't have money. Does Killer Monkey buy another IFT here? He's going to buy an SFA and then pass. So Womp Rat has priority and does have a dump opportunity on K8RPY. That would be problematic if he were to get that company. Doesn't have great long-term potential, has 2 non-permanent trains, treasury's sold out, doesn't have great track, and has used a lot of its tokens. So may see that happen. He would be, if Womp Rat dumped this, would be in position to start the RCS. RCS is usually a pretty good company, has a home tile in Palermo, which is a very expensive tile, and oftentimes can shoot east across the north into Messina. There's not going to be any competition for the Messina token because IFT has a token, but ATA does not, and none of the other companies are in a position to token there. So not a bad company. It does have very expensive tokens, if I recall, $130. So you need a part high, but they will be able to as they're now in the green and soon to be in the brown phase. May see that happen. SFA does lay into Palermo, so he may also be looking to start the RCS in the near future if he's given the opportunity. And going to run his 2 trains and pays out. He issues all of his shares, has a ton of cash now, and he will be looking to buy the last 8, it looks like. 8 is also not a permanent train. So does he have the money to buy the 8 and the 10? He would need $900 to do that, and he does. So that may be what we're seeing. Does he have the train slots to do it? Train limit is 3, so I don't think he can. And instead we'll just sit on his cash. ATA, going to be laying up towards Messina, helping the IFT with this track as well, and running pretty well. He's actually withholding, so he may be looking at preparing for that 10 when it rusts the 6. He buys the last 8. So going to open up the 10 for SFA in the next operating round. Wonder why he's helping with that. He has just 1 6. So I guess he wants SFA to rust its own 6s. I don't know if he's going to be super motivated to do that. He may want to let someone else buy that and then hope to scramble for a 12 or something like that. The 10s are the first permanent train, so they are pretty good. They're cheaper than the rest of them. But we'll see how that rush breaks. CTL is going to upgrade Palermo. This was kind of set up by the SFA laying all this track, so this is a pretty big win for CTL if he's able to get that token. Doesn't block the SFA from running to Palermo, obviously, which is kind of the goal. You don't necessarily need to be running through it as long as you can reach it and get that big revenue. He is finally able to take advantage of his private by linking up with a port, so he will be running a little bit better than he otherwise would have. But again, this is all narrow gauge track, so it's very expensive to run that track. IFT, still no train. We'll link up with Messina. Probably will not token that, as it's going to lose the token if he does. And we see him hold the token. Doesn't have money. Does have money for the first 10, so we'll get a cheap permanent. 10 is pretty good in the IFT, because if you're able to lay a gentle curve here into Catania, you can actually run from Calabria to this offboard with a 10 train. I believe otherwise, if you don't get this, you need a 12 train. Yeah, so 10 is adequate for this run if you get the right track. So pretty good pairing of train with company for K8. He's going to take a share back off the market. Did, before buying a train, fall back quite far and was at risk of the company closing, but looks like he is going to try and salvage his company. He has a permanent train, so even though his treasury is exhausted and he's not going to have much more opportunity to get money into the company, he is safe. He doesn't need to worry about train liability now. CTL's second operation, and does he start laying track for the RCS and CTL to head over to Messina? He does have priorities, so may want to look to do that because it would help both of his companies potentially. Instead, going to be linking up for a second run into Palermo with the CTL. May also be looking to hopefully bypass some narrow gauge track, but unfortunately, because of the way this is laid, we'll have to lay narrow gauge track this way as well. So not entirely sure what he's hoping to accomplish there. He only has one train, only going to be able to hit Palermo once, and is going to be losing out in terms of tempo in getting into Messina with this track. SFA, no trains, has a ton of money, and he will be upgrading Syracuse. I guess that's to secure a run into this offboard, and probably we'll see a token there as a result. Definitely doesn't want the IFT to get that token. And he does token it. He's out of tokens now, and looking to buy a 10. Doesn't have money for the 12 and the 10, which is something I'm sure he'd like. Going to take shares out of the market. ATA has 2 trains, upgrading Catania and just increasing its run as a result. IFT does upgrade Messina, so we'll be able to run into Calabria, but doesn't have the gentle track it needs here in order to get a full 10 train run into that offboard. But we'll be looking to do that soon, I assume. This green track is not going to last long because the 12 train is about to break. All right, so next stock round, Womprat has priority and may be looking to grab this RCS. It has nice synergy with the CTL, which has the other token in Palermo. We'll have to sell some shares to do it, but probably worth it. Can push that 12H out, get a permanent train, and then we'll be on the hook for another permanent train in the CTL, but as a result of parring the RCS high, may have some more company money to kind of shuffle trains around and put himself in a better position. So instead of that, he actually starts the SFA. I don't know. That not only does it open up a double share, it doesn't really give him what he needs moving forward. So questionable. Martin selling out of the ATA. Does that mean he's happy to start the RCS? Looks like he's selling, so he does get the RCS. A gift from Womprat. It does mean that the SFA double share is available, but starting a great company like the RCS for a high par takes precedence over protecting your double shares. K8RPY is probably not going to return the favor and sit on that double share, though. I imagine he buys that. And he immediately snaps it up. Killer Monkey, he's buying an IFT. And Womprad is investing further in the SFA. Martin, does he buy more shares in the RCS? He does. So he knows that he's going to be on the hook for some more expensive trains, needs to get some more money to afford them. RCS is already linked up with Trax, so will need a train on its first operation. Could look to shuffle with the SFA, but will fall back as a result on both of his companies in that first operating round, which is never ideal. But may need to do that in order to afford his train. Otherwise, he's going to have to sell a bunch of shares to get that 12. K8 is taking a share in a ATA, which has 2 trains but no permanent trains. Killer Monkey, he is actually selling the CTL and buying an RCS. So giving Martin some much needed help in terms of buying trains here. And K8RPY passing. Killer Monkey has a ton of cash, probably going to be leaving the priority or the stock round in last in priority, and he is selling some of his own shares to buy another RCS. So Martin getting a lot of help here. Now actually will be able to afford a train without shuffling, so he's breathing a sigh of relief there. And Womprad also helping. This does expose that double share, but it's quite expensive, so Martin's not going to be able to afford it. K8RPY probably cannot afford it without significant sales. Probably can't do it, period. And Killer Monkey could sell a bunch to take it, but I don't know if it's quite expensive. So he is selling CTL. Is he looking to buy this double share? Looks like it. Yeah. All right, so Martin is fully capitalized. He has a ton of money in the RCS. Will be able to buy his permanent train and then probably looking to just rush towards Messina. If the RCS and the CTL both lay track towards Messina, it really doesn't take that long. It looks like there's 2 track points, 6 track points required, so they will not get there in this set of operating rounds, but they can get there in the first operating round of the next set. So really not too long until they get some really nice routes into Messina. CTL has no tokens, so cannot run through Messina if Martin doesn't allow it, which I imagine he's not feeling super generous. So as a result, CTL may not be cooperating. If that's the case, RCS will take much longer to reach Messina than we just stated. Killer Monkey passing. Looks like everybody's content to pass. Killer Monkey will be leaving the stock round with a bunch of cash just in his inventory, nothing invested. RCS first operation, looks like he'll probably begin in the 12. And he's upgrading his home city. That does help the SFA, but also helps the CTL. And he takes the 12. This means that Messina is going to be unavailable to both of these companies for this entire operating set. And I believe the 16 trains are now available. They are. So these are the final permanents in the game, and they are now available to the other companies. When they come out, they'll rust the 8s, which is going to be bad for the ATA, who has 2 8s and very little money, no shares to issue. SFA has a permanent train. We'll probably be just running towards Palermo, wishing that that track was standard gauge, almost certainly. Instead running down south, so probably did the math and realized that the revenue was a little bit better there, which is totally fair. I haven't actually done the math. CTL, no permanent train, no money in the company, in a dangerous position. He is going to be upgrading Girenti, just looking to maximize his run. Does he not run towards Palermo? No. So I imagine that the Palermo run is better, right? I mean, even if he just hits Girgenti and Palermo, he is running for 170. So don't know why he's picking this route. I mean, he has an A train. He could run those 2 companies, or those 2 stops. Well, I guess it's only $10, so he doesn't care. ATA, 2 non-permanent trains. We'll be upgrading Ragusa, just going to be optimizing his routes. IFT, I think if you're the IFT player, you got to secure this tile here. You can't upgrade Messina. There's nothing else you really are looking to lay. So grab that so you can secure your 10 run once Messina is available to upgrade again. He instead passes. I don't know why you wouldn't lay this tile. It's not like it's costing you anything to do it. Rather than just passing, you should just take that tile. He does token Messina. Messina is no longer in danger of losing that token, but he's also not in any danger, not preventing anybody from running through there, and not going to be tokened out. So I don't know that you need to spend your token there. IFT running his train and pays that out. RCS first operation will be starting his way towards Messina and has a great 12 train to run, but unfortunately because of the tokens, Gigante is not running for all that much. SFA trainless. It looks like the 16 trains are available, so we'll be having to out of pocket this train for about $200 unless he wants to shuffle, but probably just going to buy it to rust the other players' trains before they have an opportunity to run again. That's going to put the ATA in a rough spot. And he does buy the permanent train. So we are in the final phase of the game, and Martin has met all of his train liability. CTL, just like the ATA, is going to be trainless, and he skips all his... He actually does lay this track, which is reducing his company cash a little bit, and we'll have to sell a share to afford the train. That really hurts. Because that takes all of your cash going into the next stock round. So he's not going to be able to buy shares to make up for his falling back. He was able to get one of the reverse trains, so these are cheaper trains that become available after the first 16 has been bought, and he does have a lot of narrow gauge that he can run with that, but still not at all ideal. I mean, it's not going to be running that well, and he's not going to be able to buy any shares as a result of this, so really good for Martin to rust these trains when he did. ATA may be looking at that cheap reverse train as well. Again, there is narrow gauge track down here, so not the end of the world in terms of having to run that train, but really sad for these companies and these players to not be able to get these 8 runs. So he picks up his permanent train and does have the money to redeem a share. Doesn't really have anything else to spend the money on, so may see him do that. And he does. IFT, again, you gotta lay this track. And he has now passed it twice. Don't understand that at all. Can dump this company on Killer Monkeys, but why? I mean, you have a permanent train in it, it has great routes, just run it. Buy up your shares. The only... So Killer Monkey has priority here. He could buy this double share and steal the presidency. So maybe Kate RPY is seeing that. I mean, that's almost certainly going to happen. I don't know why you wouldn't do that, actually. And as a result, doesn't want the IFT to be too good. But, you know, just losing the presidency doesn't mean that you aren't still invested in the company. So increasing the runs of the company still benefits you, even if the other player is controlling it. I don't know. I think that's, you know, it's unfortunate that he's going to probably lose control of the company here, but you probably still want to lay these track. Last operating run in the set, RCS running 2 permanent trains. So he must have bought one of those trains out of the SFA and force bought the 16 in order to rust those other players' trains. That's aggressive, but it worked out great for him because these other players have very little cash and were forced to buy crappy reverse 6 trains. I missed that he had shuffled in order to push the trains there. That was smart. RCS probably continuing to head to Messina. Yep. Running his 2 trains. SFA now has a beautiful run for its 16 and is going to be... Is he looking to bypass Ragusa potentially? Maybe just hoping to get a brown dit there, as I think the brown dits are worth a little bit more. Yeah, they're worth 20, so just kind of getting a few extra bucks down the road. And he's going to pay out CTL, no money, no money, no way to get money, and we'll be running the Palermo track, I assume. Yeah. ATA, also in a rough spot, and he is going to be getting the upgrade on that DIT that we saw laid earlier, and running for 150. So really kind of a miserable endgame run, but doesn't have much else going for it. IFT, still can't upgrade Messina, still can take this track if he wants, and passing. So that's the end of that operating round. Killer Monkey, does he see the potential for the steal on IFT here? He is selling out of the ATA, realizing that that company is kind of dead in the sense that it's never going to be running for very much, even though it has a permanent train. And he does take the IFT. So that's very unfortunate for K8. And as a result of the swap, he's actually able to steal the 20% share from K8, so that's even a little bit more painful. You'd love to maintain your double share. Actually, sorry. K8 is able to hit back a little bit on the theft of the company by stealing Killer Monkey's double share. I misinterpreted that. So that's actually kind of nice for K8. He doesn't lose the share density. So he loses control of the company, but he doesn't take the additional hit of having to sell shares or not being able to buy a share as a result, which is nice for him. ATA getting bought by Womprat. As we said, that company has very limited potential. Don't know that that is a real attractive buy. His other option would be only to float the AFG, though. There's no shares that he can buy otherwise, so it does make sense to be buying it. ATA, or Martin, buying a CTL. K8 is also investing in the ATA. So he does have a different option of investing in terms of buying CTL shares instead of the ATA. So a little bit confused by that. Killer Monkey passing, he's cert locked. Womprat is buying another ATA. Martin buying CTL. This does open up the double share for K8, but K8 lacks any presidencies, is a fair ways behind Martin already, so maybe Martin just doesn't feel threatened and is happy to give it to him, which he is happy to take. Womprat buying his last share, just passes, okay. Martin is also about to be cert locked and only has the option of buying an ATA share unless he was looking to float the AFG. So if he buys that, he will give yet another double share to K8, who snaps it up. So K8, despite not having any presidencies, is tied for the most shares and has room to go on his cert limit. He's still in a rough spot in terms of net worth, but having 3 double shares is pretty nice. And everybody passes. So that means Killer Monkey has priority, and he does have dump opportunities. Maybe looking to loot the 10H out of the IFT and rehabilitate his ATA with that, and give it back to K8. So he stole it, might be happy to return it, but this time trainless. Need to be looking out for that. Womprat also, well, Womprat only has one company, so he could dump it, but wouldn't be hurting Martin, just helping him, so won't see that. And then Martin also has dump opportunities in the RCS, but the RCS has 2 permanent trains. He only has 2 companies, so he would have to dump that with a permanent train. Won't be seeing that happen. Also would have to withhold to do it, so there's no way that's happening. Only way that a company gets dumped after this operating round is the IFT, and that may not be in the best interest of Killer Monkey because what else is he going to buy if he sells those shares? So we may just be seeing a stagnant game state here. RCS is going to be rushing towards Messina. Should be able to get there. And Martin looks like he's in a pretty commanding position to take this game. 2 great companies running for a lot, and only going to get better for him if he can get into Messina. RCS continuing to work along the north coast. SFA, there's not too much interesting track for SFA to lay now. He's just kind of working his way up on these dits, but probably not going to see anything else. CTL, also not a whole lot of interesting track. Doesn't have money for any of these expensive train costs, but does he help the RCS get into Messina? Is he invested in the RCS? Not really. He has one share, so probably definitely not looking to help the RCS in any way. Can't really prevent it from getting to Messina, but not going to contribute to its goal, it looks like. IFT can start upgrading Messina now to get into Calabria, but I think that you probably still want to lay this track here before Messina, because this track could be taken from you by one of these other players, and you'll be missing out in the long term on that nice 10 run. Messina can wait. He upgrades Messina, does get access to Calabria, but yeah, I guess it makes sense to run Calabria instead of into this offboard and DIT, but may regret that. ATA. So he immediately takes that token or that tile opportunity away from the IFT. He is the same presidency, so I guess that makes it a little bit more likely that we're going to see a dump here because he's laying unfriendly track for the IFT. ATA, running his reverse 6, again pretty underwhelming. He may just be laying this track here actually in order to allow his ATA to run the reverse 6 into Catania. That would be all narrow gauge, so I think he can make it. So maybe not looking to dump the IFT, just help the ATA. He is only a minority owner of the ATA, so him and K8 are kind of best friends in a sense that they have invested in the same companies. RCS continue to head towards Messina, yep. SFA, again, not really too much interesting track, just getting an extra 10 bucks. CTL, kind of out of track options. IFT, unfortunately, doesn't have the option of laying track towards this offboard anymore, and he does have the money to lay narrow gauge track here, but is going to pass. Or he just upgrades Messina, okay. ATA does link up that narrow gauge track and is going to be running for a little bit more with his R6 as a result. So increases by 40 bucks. Nice. Last round in the set, Martin continuing to slowly work his way to Messina and just paying out with his companies. The SFA is still just working on these dits, so he's motivated to optimize his run. CTL doing nothing. IFT also doesn't have much track to lay at this point. So he lays that towards Palermo. That's going to allow the RCS to get into Messina one turn earlier. I don't follow this move. Doesn't really help him. He's not going to be able to run into Palermo very easily with just a 10 hex. And ATA actually links it up, so he is happy to assist the RCS. That seems like a mistake. Yeah, not sure. We'll see what this player has planned. I mean, that was an intentional decision. He did 2 track lays to help, so we'll see what he does in the next stock round. He could dump the IFT, and looks like, okay, so that's what we're going to see. He did buy the train over, and he's going to dump an IFT trainless on K8. And he will have nothing to buy as a result of that. He'll have to start the AFG. The problem with this is that starting with the AFG is not going to help you very much. It's going to fall back 1 operating round. If you don't par it high enough, you're not going to be able to afford this train. You may have to pay out of pocket for it. And the AFG is not going to have that great of a run. I see now why he's laying this track, because he's going to lay a token with AFG in Messina, and he will be running that track and preventing the RCS from getting there. But can he actually even operate before the RCS? No. But the RCS, yeah, the RCS could token that track. Oh, I see. He places the token when he floats. So he will be able to get there before the RCS gets there, which is unfortunate for Martin, but I don't think that changes the game state. Martin's already ahead, and this company, as we said, is not going to be operating for one of these operating rounds. Martin's also very close to ending the game here, so even if he were to push money into the bank with a train, the game is still going to end when Martin operates 3 times, unless somebody sells down the RCS. Um, Killer Monkey does own a share on the RCS, so could do that to try and extend the game, but I think the bank breaks either way, so um, I don't know that this is the right play here. But to be fair, I think everybody but Martin's going to lose this game, regardless of what he does here, so he might just be trying to mix things up and keep it interesting. Anyway, IFT gets dumped here. So it's funny, this company was dumped twice, and both times the double share changed hands as a result of the dump. So he is back in the position that he was originally in at before the dump, but has looted himself a permanent train. So a little bit of sloppy play from K8 allowing that to happen, both the presidency steal and then the train steal. Taking the AFG, and he does take the token in Messina, so that's the end of that for RCS, but RCS still has great runs. It's not really the end of the world for him at all. And this does give other players shares that they could potentially buy, either in the AFG or the IFT. So Womprat was not at his cert limit, is very happy to see more shares being made available. He is buying an AFG. Martin passing, Crippy can buy AFG or IFT, and looks like he's looking towards the IFT. Realizes he's going to be running the company, might as well be getting full potential from its train. Killer Monkey continuing to buy AFG, making sure that he has enough money for a permanent train. Womprat is going to be swapping around here. It looks like is he looking for another AFG? He does. So it thinks that that company will be running more than the CTL will be, even though it's going to fall back one operating round. Martin is passing, and we see another IFT sell or buy. Martin now is selling an IFT. Not sure what motivated him to do that, what changed compared to before. IFT is going to be falling back, and Martin sees that and says, well, he's going to buy a CTL then instead. CTL is not a great share, but I guess he's done the math and says that it will be worth more than the IFT by the end game. K8 passing, doesn't really have shares to buy other than the AFG, which he's probably not super eager to do. Killer Monkey, now at a cert limit, AFG has plenty of money for his permanent train. Womprat passing, Martin passing, K8 passing. So Killer Monkey is going to take the opportunity to change his portfolio up a little bit. Sells one share out of the ATA. So this is going to make him lose the presidency potentially if K8RPY is able to get that. I don't know what that's about. And what share is he going to replace it with? ATA has 2 trains now. It's going to be running better than it was. So what is he looking to buy here? He buys a 6th share in the AFG. I don't know. I think you hold the ATA there. Does anybody leap on this ATA share, or does K8 get it? Looks like Womprat's going to take it, and that will protect the presidency for Killer Monkey. Martin is going to sell, and that will allow K8 to still take it. What does Martin buy here? So he buys a CTL share. Okay. So K8 first buys the double share. Could have taken the presidency of the ATA. Are people forgetting that this company has 2 trains now and will be running for a lot better than it was before? I'm unclear. I mean, what does the AFG share do for you? It's a 2 share, so that's true. I mean, it will get you more stock density as a result. Does he look to sell something and get that ATA down the road? Womprat, selling out of the SFA, probably going to take the ATA here. And he does. Okay, so someone eventually steals this presidency, just not the player I was anticipating. And Martin is going to sell the CTL. Didn't he just buy the CTL? He did. And he's going to buy what? An SFA. So he buys the SFA that Womprat sold. SFA is a better share for sure. So, okay. Some interesting little maneuvering going on in the stock round. As a result of losing that presidency, Killer Monkey is going to lose some share density and have to sell a share. He sells an ATA, and Womprat is happy to take it up. Everybody should be done now, right? Yeah. All right, so some just interesting little, heel biting there. Martin is still in the lead here, but the other players are happy to kind of screw each other over to get incremental advantages. RCS is going to again just be upgrading dits. Has unfortunately lost out his run into Calabria, so just making the best of that. Still running for much more than most of the other companies. AFG, first operation, has a massive treasury. Can he afford 2 trains? No, just 1. But certainly going to be buying a 16 train. Doesn't have the most amazing routes here. Can hit Calabria and Messina. I actually don't know if there's can reach Palermo with a 16 train or not. I could count it out. So he can. So probably going to be looking to do that. And he only has 1 presidency, correct? Yes, so he can't even take advantage of this treasury. Or else I'm sure he would be looking to buy a second train for his other companies. SFA doesn't have really any track to do, just upgrading dits. And CTL, similarly, no real interesting track. ATA, the interesting thing here will be to see how he develops his routes now that he has 2 trains. And he is laying a loop for, I don't know what the purpose of that is. He's not even running towards Gurgenti, so just kind of throwing away money. And he is running for 450, which is a ton better than the 190 it was running for before as a result of having 2 trains now. So anybody that was sleeping on these ATA shares is probably kicking themselves. IFT has to out of pocket a very expensive train. He has just the 1 presidency, so this will be coming from his personal treasury. This puts him out of the game. He was already trailing Martin, and Martin's going to win this game, but he will probably be in last place as a result of this. And actually has to sell shares in order to do it, so it's even worse than it would otherwise be. So this game is over. Martin has won. There's no interesting track left. Everybody has met their trains, so we'll just skip to the end. And as advertised, Martin takes it. Pretty commanding lead, 1,500 over Killer Monkey. Well played to him. I think this was an interesting game. A lot of kind of little finesse moves in the stock round. But Martin was able to just run away with it as a result of getting the RCS and pushing trains at the right times. Well played to all the players, and we will look forward to bringing more 1849 in the future. This is a pretty fun game to play and comment, so we will look for more. Thank you for listening.